So, hello everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Sahaj Times podcast. My name is Lely. I'm the host of this podcast. For this episode, I have a new co-host. You've seen the introduction, Rohit Verma. How you
Yeah,
doing, man? Welcome to the podcast.
I'm doing great. What a great way to start my day. Glad to be here.
It's true because it's 6 a.m. in New Zealand right now, where you are right now. I guess you're there.
Yes,
I've
I
been
am.
told you're there. Really
Yes, I am.
cool. And since this episode is so much focused on the volunteering at the Sahaj schools, and you went to the Davis School, would you like to introduce our, I would say, guests for this episode?
Yeah, sure. I'll try my best. These guys don't need an introduction. I'll start with the Davies School board member, Mrs. Anna. Please welcome.
Thank
Welcome,
you.
Anna Biggs.
Sakallah.
Welcome to the podcast. Where are
Thank
you at,
you. Thank
Anna? Where
you.
are you at right now?
I'm in Turkey. I'm in Mersin, Turkey, which is like Mersin is a city in the very south of Turkey, the Mediterranean region. So it's very hot, very beautiful, very tropical.
Okay, cool. And who's the next one?
I'll continue my emceeing. I'll have the pleasure to introduce the one and only Leonardo Sforza.
Yay!
There
Yay!
he really hyped. I don't know how many coffees he took, but I think he doesn't need coffee at all. And so, guys, thank you very much for joining for this episode. I got contacted by Anna to talk about this topic because, as you know, schools, Sahaj schools, are always looking for some volunteers to join them to help them as aunties, as uncles, dorm aunties, dorm uncles. I don't even know the difference between them. I think there is no difference, and also teachers and principals, I guess.
Yeah.
So I would like to know a little bit about your experiences as volunteers. So I'm talking to Rohit and Anna. Maybe ladies first, but in which school did you go to, and what was your job there? What were you doing, and how was your experience? Any miracle story, or feel free to share wherever you want.
Awesome. All right. So I mean, I went to Sahaja School myself. So I went to Romashram and I went to ISPS for a few years. And then when I was finishing up with my university degree, I was looking for jobs, and I saw on Facebook actually back in the day, Maha had like written a message basically being like, "Oh, we need like an admin person," and I was like, "Oh well, that's kind of like a legit job, like going to help with the admin. Like I can justify taking a bit of a break and like going." And I felt such cool vibrations because I was in the library actually studying for one of my exams, and I felt such cool vibrations on top of my head. I was like, okay, I gotta call, I gotta find out. So I called Maha. There was a lot of hype, and I pretty quickly signed up and was like already helping out at the Davy School. But when I actually arrived in the Davy School, it was a very different story because if you've ever worked in a Sahaj school, you know that a lot of the time we're short on staff. It's no secret. And it was 2019, kind of September 2019, and they really needed a science teacher. Now, I'd never taught science, I'd never taught in my life up until that point. And they were like, sure, like, why don't you just take one class and just go for it? And I remember it was actually Leonardo's class that was my first class. And I don't know, I got a really warm welcome from them, and I kind of, I guess from there I just I started teaching them chemistry, biology. I was teaching physics at some point. And honestly learning on the job for sure. Um and yeah, I guess just my main kind of takeaway is that, like, okay, the qualification is important, but once you kind of just surrender to it, Shumalaji really does help you to be that teacher. And I was so afraid. I had literally just turned 21. And every day before class, I was like, Shamataji, you're the teacher. Like, I don't know these kids. I don't know what I'm gonna do with them for an hour and 20 minutes. And with Leonardo's class, it ended up being like 4 hours a day that I'd be with these kids, right? So 4 hours a day to try and like be like, what am I doing with them? Like, this is serious. This is their high school education. Like, gotta do something. Like, in a way, I felt that responsibility, that I had to like teach them something. And of course, being the teacher. And I guess, yeah, them like now sometimes I hear from them like from some of the students being like, yeah, miss, I used this thing that you taught us in chemistry, or we like studied this in uni. And so yeah, that's kind of my confirmation that I didn't mess up, too bad.
Really cool, really cool. I
Yeah.
really love that when people join us in the podcast, they start mentioning people as if everybody knew them.
Yeah,
Like,
sorry.
so probably Maha is listening to this, and she's definitely invited to the podcast for volunteering inside the Yoga Part 2 episode, also because she went there.
Yeah.
Uh, Thank you,
Yeah.
Anna, for your experience. I'll get back to you really soon, but because I want to hear also something from Rohit. Man, take the lead.
Yeah. I'll put on my Davies School. I don't have a physical hat. I'll put on my Davies School volunteer hat. I'll just speak a few words. I actually heard about Davies School very much earlier on, before they even started the school. Somebody did a presentation at a Yuva seminar in Toronto, and it was around the time I was still finishing up uni, and I was listening to this presentation. I was like, wow, amazing vibration, similar reaction, like, wow, this is where I should be. There's where I need to be. At that time I had a full-time job offer to go back to, and go to San Francisco, work there at a big company. But instead, because the vibrations were so strong, to just go to this school, I decided I would just do that after graduating. And that was really, really cool to be part of that first, part of the first year a little bit, the first few months. Leo was also there for that. Um, and my initial thought was I would be there for 3 months at Davies School, but I just loved it so much. I just enjoyed it so much vibrations. And what's really cool is that you really feel the love of Sri Mataji, her presence there, and also her love through the children and the staff working there, because you're basically dedicating, you're basically your entire time doing work for her, doing work for Sahaj Yoga, doing Sahaj work, and it's really very powerful to do that. So I left in like 3-4 months. Then I came back after 6 months and did that a few times. Kept leaving. Like, no, I gotta figure something out. I gotta just come back, and then I just came back. So I did that a few times. I think overall probably spent 2-3 years at the school, and it's definitely been a highlight of my life. And I'm very grateful that I was able to be there and be part of such a great, amazing thing. And I highly recommend it to everybody. And yeah, I'll put on my co-host hat again.
Really cool, man. I think I already have a question for you because you mentioned something really interesting. But first of all, let's talk to the student. So, Leo.
Thank you, Lele. I want to say a few things. First of all, to Anna, like hearing it from the student side, this is also quite fun for everyone, including myself. And I want to say a few things. Like, of course, I understand. Now I'm 21. I also have this insane desire to go volunteer. And it's funny to hear how, unprepared, let's say, or let's say unqualified, and how you learned on the job. But let me tell you, when I was there, I had no idea. Like, wow, Nasana's doing all these things. Wow, wow, wow. You have a bachelor's? That's insane.
Yeah. Exactly.
So
Now you know.
definitely fake it till you make it. So I know some people are worried or see that as an obstacle, but actually, if you look at society, how we built it, that you have to get a degree that says, okay, now you can teach. I mean, let me tell you, at uni, I passed courses. You ask me something now, I have no idea what I did. So it's also something that's within you. And then to link it nicely to what Rohit was saying, how love, like in the end, the greatest guru we have is love. And let me tell you, I know this from experience. Like if I look back at my time, at Sahaja Schools, I can pinpoint which adults, which yuvas poured their love into us, and you can feel it and you give it right back to them because that's all
Yeah.
you know. And it's so powerful. I kid you not, I had no idea Rohit left the first year. I have zero memories of
Oh.
that. Somehow, 1, 2, 3, you're there, and then I do remember you were going off and on, and and I was like, oh my god, Rohit is just coming back every year to be part of this amazing family. And when you're there,
Mm,
it's like, but I had no idea you left the first year. So this just goes to show what you highlighted is so true. This love that it
mm,
comes back, but you have to be the one putting it in, and then it doesn't
yes.
matter if like this is not the point. The point is to have this love to be because first of all you have to love yourself and then to pour
Mm,
that onto this whole ecosystem. It's a living being. It's it's a organism that evolves, that changes, and that's I think one of the struggles. It's like easily you can
yeah.
pinpoint, oh, this was bad. Let me tell you, when I was at the Davy school, most of the time we were just complaining about small things here and there, and then as soon as you graduate, you 1 year passes by, I have no idea what we talked about. All these bad
Oh.
small things that troubled you, they just disappear, and all you see is this canvas that's filled with color. And this is what stuck with me. And I guess as a yuva myself, and now it's like I want to give that to someone else as well. And also to myself, I want to experience that because that's
Mm,
definitely possible. So thank you for, because I really wanted to connect. You said these two pieces that are, I think, critical to the conversation and are really nice.
Okay, so guys, this was a little bit of the introduction of our guest. So now, guys, feel free to join in what people are saying. Feel free to step in, especially when I am talking. So because
okay.
I'm the one who has no experience with all of this. And first of all, Leo, I think you are the most balanced, right-sided person I've ever seen in my life. I
It's
know
a
your
good way of
father.
putting it.
I know your father. He's also really a really balanced, right-sided person.
Yeah, yeah.
You heard it first on the podcast. Joking.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I would like to invite him. Also, would like to invite an entire class from I don't know from the past in the Davis School. But the first questions that I have for you guys, and also Leo, you said something really interesting. I always thought that people will go to like as an uncle, as an auntie at the school because they felt a little bit lost in life.
Mm,
You know, because I've got like a gap here that I need to fill somehow. So I think I might go to a Sahaj school. As Leo is talking right now, it feels like he has to do it because vibrations are guiding him. And same happened like with Rohim, same with Anna. So am I just wrong about this? Rohit, go
I,
for it.
yeah,
Okay.
sure. I'll keep switching my hats. I think it's both. So first of all, yeah, for sure. I think it works out both ways. You know, sometimes people have this calling, like, yeah, vibrations are feeling nice. I just have to go. But other times, it's also, you know, your situation in life brings you to a point where you're like, okay, you know, I don't really know what to do. You know,
mm,
working at a school sounds like a good idea, and I will, yeah. So if you think that that would benefit you and that would benefit, you know, most of all the people at the school, and that's where you're there. You're there to help the people at school. You help the school, the children, and staff. So if you feel like that's a good moment for you to go to a school, that's also okay. You don't necessarily have to really feel like there's this big calling. Oh yeah, you know, I had a dream. I have to go work at a school. No, you don't really have to have that, but
mm.
just have a desire. You know, as long as the desire is there, you can feel free to apply, and I'll let Mrs. Anna talk more about that and what the procedure is there. But yeah, you don't really need to have this strong calling feeling within yourself. As long as you have this desire that, hey, I have some I'm trying to figure out what to do. Maybe a Sahaj school is a good idea, and then you can at least start the process and see what happens. That's my
I
opinion.
would I would totally echo that. I mean, I felt very strong vibrations to go, but also I think something that pulled me at the time was that I was going to university where there weren't any yogis, you know. I was kind of the only one there. I wasn't living in London, so I didn't have access to all the ashrams in the same way. And actually, like part of it was that I just wanted to experience like a bigger collective. And I'd already been on Sahaj like tours, I'd already been to seminars, pujas, this kind of thing. But you know, I kind of like to think of the Sahaj school experience as kind of like the detour, because you might not know what you want to do with your life, but if you do go and you're able to give something else, someone else, your attention, your love, your energy, your time, you know, then when you return, you're kind of returning back actually to the same point. Because in a way, you go to the Sahaj school, you might not be knowing, you know, what you want to do, but you take time to focus away from yourself, you know. We're always stuck in this path of like, what should I do? What's next year? What's next year? What's next year? Oh, Ganesha Puja comes. What happens in September, you know? But it's so nice to take that detour. And then actually for me, for example, I stayed at the Davis School 3 years. But after 3 years, I knew like, okay, I'm going to go back. I'm going to study to become a teacher. And I'm not saying that that happens to everyone, but I think having a bit of space to also just move the focus from you, move the attention from you, then you can come back when you're ready. You know, everything is going to be the same. I remember after my second year in the Davis School, I was like, oh, like I've been there 2 years. I should probably just start working again. And I was just sitting in a cafe and like applying to jobs and having my cappuccino. And I just looked around me and I was like, hey, this is all going to be here. Like, if I go one more year, like I'm going to come back after 1 year. And this is all still like, cafe is still going to be here, can still get a cappuccino, can still be applying for work. And so that's kind of why I also think that it's not a bad thing to take the detour, you know. Because you grow a little bit, you get wiser also from working with kids. It's like such a mirror, you know. It's like whatever you think, the kids are going to mirror back to you. And same with the love, you know, you leave with so much love. So, and that's fuel for then going on to the rest of, you know, what you want to do, what you want to achieve. Connections, even, you know, you build connections, friendships for life. And so yeah, there's definitely something there. I think, yeah, I like the phrase the detour.
Yeah, it's
And
interesting that you say the detour, because I guess, I mean, yeah, it's interesting. I for sure you could probably feel it. I want to go pretty badly, but for myself, I can be quite open that I think I see myself in the shoes of Rohit, where I'm about to finish my degree and also working, and so it's like on a mental level, let's say, it's a challenge for me to fit where in time would I want to go there, because it's definitely a pause on life. And we definitely have to integrate into society. So getting a job, well, it could be anything, right? And you're definitely putting pause to, let's say, those. And I feel like it's also, you have to figure out when you can do that, because I definitely feel it's not the same for everyone. If you have responsibilities that you just can't, you know, you're not free to take that 1 year. That's a lot, you know, especially let's say you're working, you have young
yeah.
kids, you have a mortgage. Like if you have all these things, then it also doesn't make sense. So I would even say this is an even stronger reason to go when you are, let's say, quote unquote, free. And a good time would be exactly when you finish your degree, or if you take a gap year, or before you start getting these commitments from society. Because I also felt very much that consistency in a school is also needed. So as much as you need like, yeah, you need these active people that rotate. If I think of my time in Cabela School, there was one predominant dorm staff teacher, did everything, that was there for like multiple years. And somehow that really, I looked up to that person, because also when you go to these schools, depending on the age that you go with, well, the kids age, the role model that you have to present yourself to be varies very much. I feel like when you're small, you definitely look up to your parents, but you also look up to these young yuvas and aunties and uncles that are there, if you can see that they have these qualities within them. And that's what I was saying before, that you can really tell when a volunteer is there for the right reasons, when a volunteer is capable of somehow changing your life as a student, and that sticks with you forever. I mean, this goes in life in general. We grow up, we meet people, we life-altering experiences. This also happens at these schools, and it's also an opportunity to maybe show that side. So, for example, if I now have certain experiences in my life, I almost would want to give that back,
Mm.
especially some things that I did wrong, that I would want someone, if they were struggling with the same thing, just to share a bit of light. Because I also feel Sahaj Schools is, let's say, in terms of history, it's a new thing, right? And so there should be more support between ex-students
Mm.
and new students. And I found this out in at the Puja in Sahasrara Puja this year in Cabela. They opened the school for anyone to just walk in, and you could go into every class. And there's the students there, and they'll teach you they'll tell you what they have been learning and everything. And then I look at them, I'm like, and they could recognize some of us. We went in a bigger group, all ex Cabela School students, and they're like, "Wow, you guys are on that photo." And I'm like, "Yeah, but you guys are on the photos now, and also you will grow up." And that was something so surreal because also definitely being in the first wave of things, you don't have
Mm.
like other people in the school. Like for example, when you go to university, I'm always looking, okay, who figured out what's the best room to study in, you know? So whether there is something really cool about being, let's say, the pioneers, but then the responsibility is also to share that knowledge back. And so that's how I see it for myself. I really want to go there to somehow improve and bring a good name to this. And I guess this goes into everything I do in life.
Mm.
Cool. Awesome. I just want to add one thing, and I also have a few more questions after. Um, uh, one thing I just want to, yeah, good stuff, great stuff. We are actually, one thing I want to mention is that, we all are young, you can say, and we're all, focusing kind of more on the young adults trying to volunteer. But I just also want to emphasize that, it's not just Yivas who want to go. And if you are somebody who does have his life figured out completely, has children, has a family, you can still, if you feel the vibrations, if you have the desire, feel free to go as well. We also, it's actually really interesting, the age group, you can say, at the staff, usually at Sahaja School, that varies very nicely, and it gives a good mix of things. So if you are, if you're not like super young and, between university and work, if you have everything figured out, you can still apply. It's not like only young people go there. So
Mm.
for the demographic of this podcast, because I'm sure it's not just young people. So if you're feeling like you have a desire to do that, feel free to apply as well. Um, I did have a
Yeah,
question if
definitely.
I can interrupt you there, Lily. Um, you mentioned some good points, Leo. One thing I wanted to ask was that, well, I actually forgot now, but what's the, so actually tell us again your whole journey in Sahaj schools from the beginning. Like, has there been some gaps where you haven't been to Sahaj school? Can you just remind us?
Yeah, well, I haven't told anyone. So I was fortunate enough to go to Borton for kindergarten,
Okay.
5 years of elementary school at Cabela, and then I
Mm-hmm.
did take 3 years, let's say, in public school, and
Mm-hmm.
then 4 years of high school in at the Davy School,
Cool.
and now
I would
studying.
uni.
Yeah,
Are you going to Sahaj uni? No, that's not what I meant.
not yet.
I wanted to ask actually, because there might be also be people, younger people, maybe even students at Davis School listening to this. What are some of the differences that you felt, because you did go to public school versus a Sahaj school? Maybe just speak a little bit about that. If you have
Wow,
any
that's a whole
Yeah.
Pandora's box. Okay, to put it simply, I always give the same example because I think it reflects really well. Um, so of course, kindergarten. I was also born in Romashram, so I was just constantly this bubble. Yeah, and so I okay, 5 years in Kabbalah school, and then I go to middle school. And one of the first weeks there, the first days, it's exciting to go to school. Actually, I can say this now. The first day I went, my dad dropped me off. I threw up just before entering the school, and I still remember that. I have really bad memory, probably because this right-sidedness, but I remember clearly this nausea. It was yeah, I just told my dad, Dad, I'm gonna throw up. I'm gonna throw up. And then he opens the car, and I just boom. Uh, and so the first week there, we have geometry, and so everyone has their rulers and everything. And my classmate didn't have. So they're like, oh, I don't have. And the teacher was like, oh, you should have brought it and stuff like that. And I was like, what do you mean? Just use mine. And he took this and he was actually shocked that I offered my ruler. And there I realized like how, like, why are you shocked? Why? And everyone was shocked. No one in the class would have ever thought that. And so difference, it's so hard to say, but I think it's very, very subtle. Look, in the end, it's also, I feel it's not right to say, okay, this one's definitely better, this one's definitely not, because that's not the case. Also, it's very much based on yourself, right? So, for example, some people you just see they're not fit for the school, because also the Sahaja school is so fragile, also in a way. So not everyone is can be part of it, and sometimes you feel like kids are a bit too disruptive. Just like in a collective you could have a crazy uncle and then you have to exclude them. But so for myself, the key difference was this love, and that you feel, especially when you're so small, you can be very, very sensitive to this. And then what happened was in middle school, let's say I had to fit in. So I started swearing. You try different things. Yeah, you have to fit in, because all of a sudden you are so different to the rest. You're like, but then I managed, I was there, and then my mom says, after 3 years, she's like, oh, Leo, they're opening a school in Canada. I'm like, yeah, sold. Let's go. Like it took me, I think, 5 seconds to decide. It was a no-brainer. And I think also when you're at that age, it's very tricky. Adolescence is very tricky. Everyone's very different, right? So, but supposing you're a sponge, that's how someone explained to me. When you're small, you're like a sponge. So every liquid that's dropped onto you, you will have it. And I see it like that. In the end, not I also brought negative stuff to the Davy school. Let's say, like, I used to swear a lot the first 2 years. Then some life altering experiences, and I changed. So it's also not that, oh my God, it's so perfect, shiny, but definitely it's a step ahead. And this is why we meditate every day. Like it's just something different. It's hard to explain. It's also, I feel, it will take a while. I'd have to really think about it. But I think I dragged it way too long. But I'm trying to portray this message, and it's difficult. But I think it's that it's just the love, the joy. It's just different. It's just different.
I have to jump in here as well, because I've taught also in regular schools, post Navy school, and I have to say this. We keep coming back to this, but this love aspect, like, in the Navy school, if a kid hugged me, and I was also playing this role of like older sister, teacher, if a kid hugged me, I'd hug them back, and I really struggled with that when I was teaching in regular high school, because I didn't feel like I could express my love in the same way. Of course, we have to be a little bit careful. Always, we have to be professional, and in Sahaj schools, it can be blurred. You have to be, again, careful in the classroom. I'm the teacher. Outside, sure, we can have fun, but you got to learn in the class. And I guess it's the same in a regular school. But the difference that I really felt was that, yeah, it took me some time, I think, to really, really feel like I could show the same love, And I don't know, like, maybe it's also just like the more rules, more rules for the teachers. But I remember the first time I was leaving, and the kid hugged me in a state school, and I was like, my hands are up, like I'm not gonna hug you back. But then I looked at the other teacher in the classroom, and I realized that it was all right, But I don't know, that love that you get, that you give and that you get back, in that environment, that ecosystem, it's a special thing for sure.
Can I ask you something to all of you? Because in Sahaj, when you have like a really strong Sahaj experience, you learn a lot about yourself. For me, for example, it was putting my name down, and the marriage didn't work for a good reason. I think like, that was my lesson. This might be a little bit personal, but what did you bring back from that experience, especially to Anna and Rohit, because you're joining the adulthood just like me. So what brought you to like, what made you feel like more adult in general? And for Leo, same question actually. Yeah, you can answer to every question. You're like mature enough. But yeah, let's go from Rohit maybe.
Yeah, sure, let's do it. So, yeah, I mean, amazing. Like early 20s, really, really a lot of growth. So imagine this: you're looking at Leo. Imagine him 8 years younger, and imagine 15 of them. And you have to take care of them. So it's like you have to be a good role model. You have to be somebody they look up to. So automatically, when you start being that, that becomes your personality soon enough. Then you also, and that's really cool to be able to grow like that, because all these kids are looking up to you, so you have to really be the best version of yourselves.
Mm,
And then you start to notice your own weaknesses, your own, whatever you have wrong, whatever it's not right, and then you look at that, and then you're able to see that and grow from that. So that's definitely a thing where you really become the best, well, you hope to become the best version of yourselves. um and yeah, and another thing that definitely happens, or at least happened with me, is that your heart opens up. Your heart just opens up a lot more,
mm,
because like we mentioned so many times, this love, because you're feeling this love. Your heart is full of love, so it's just overflowing now, so you want to give it out. um and yeah, and just being in that environment, people, maybe some of the listeners here have lived in ashrams, and we all know the growth that comes out of an ashram. And essentially, a Sahaj school, it's very different from ashram, but you are living with about 80 to 90 yogis together. So there's a lot of growth that comes from that, living with 100 yogis. It's a lot of different things from there. So yeah, a lot of growth. I think definitely, if I were to, yeah, kind of summarize my life so far, um, Davis School was definitely a period where I experienced a lot of growth. Experienced a lot of growth. I'll pass it back to Anna.
I have to agree, Rohit. Like, really, that growth that you get from the love. I mean, being 21, having just turned 21, and being, also just like, I guess, a little bit afraid of being in the classroom, a little bit afraid of kind of being in the spotlight and talking and having to present. And in a way, I was teaching science, so you could kind of like, I could hide in the lab and put on a lab coat and you're playing this role. But I definitely felt that there was something working out on my heart for sure. Something like I felt like, all right, yeah, I'm a pretty loving person, sure. But actually, when you go, and it's hard work, working in any Sahaj school is hard work because you're really giving of yourself and of your time. Um, and sometimes I was teaching way too much, way too many hours in a day. But I always felt that if I was tired and like a kid would just come up and make a joke or say something to me, that I would like instantly, you forget that you're tired and that you just want to chill, you want to be on your own because the collectivity takes over, and there's nothing more joyful than just embracing that collectivity. And kind of going back to also the fear, actually the love that you get is kind of the perfect antidote. Like I became so confident actually after the Davies School, this real sense of confidence, because the teacher student relationship, like there's such a fine mariada there. And like Rohit said, like once you're put in that position, you want to do better. And I also even felt that Shimadaji gave me all the tools that I needed. Oh, you need to teach physics to this kid and you don't know this topic in physics. Oh, here's a video for you to show the kids. Here's an article. Or here's a yogi uncle that like I randomly remembered that I could reach out to, or my Raki brother who like came and did some guest lectures. Like the tools were totally there. I just kind of had to surrender the fact that I was 21 and didn't really know what I was doing. But at the same time, because I had that desire, it all kind of came. I have to say, like, it all came. And I know also on the dorm side, some dorm staff have shared with me that like sometimes you have these situations where you're talking to the kids, they're asking for advice, it's quite intense, it might be above your level. But if you're just talking out of love, you're going to say something that's going to help that kid. You're going to be able to be given those tools that's going to make the situation all right, calm everything down. And so yeah, I think that's why, we say these schools are Shimadaji schools, these kids are Shimadaji's kids, because you can really feel the attention of the divine. Maybe in a similar way that, when you put your name down, you feel the attention of the divine on you. It's very similar when you're working for any Sahaj project. You feel that actually I'm not the one doing this, the divine is. And so I really took that away. Like even now, actually, I have some weekly calls with the Davy School, and I always feel the vibrations, even if I'm exhausted. I'm in Turkey. I'm hours away from Canada. I always feel that click. Oh yeah, it's not us. Oh yeah, we're doing something bigger here, you know. And there's some magic in that, I have to say, for sure.
Actually, I want to grab what you just said and surrender because
Mm.
so Lele, you might not know this, but I actually did volunteer at the Davy School. So on two occasions, one was Teachers' Day where we became the staff. No, I'm joking. I was
Uncle Leo.
Uncle Leo. I was actually on a dorm duty. I was waking up everyone. But that's besides the point. Actually, I was fortunate enough to go to Kanajohari for the puja, and the Davy School was there, and they drove. So I asked if I could drive back with them and help out because they also need help outside of the school. Like, so for example, so yeah, I went back and I was digging trenches with another Yuva for the Wi-Fi. We had to get like cables going, and I remember when we arrived at the school, I it was similar to when I graduated. I thought it would be such an emotional moment. I thought that I would be in tears, but I was the definition of joy. Like it's you're driving and you're like, oh my god, in a few hours I will be there, and you're like, it's such a overwhelming feeling that I thought I would explode, and yet I felt the calmest. I felt, I would assume, how the joy of the spirit really feels. And I tell you, when I was there as a volunteer, the attention I felt of the divine itself was very different to when I was there as a student. Almost to say that the things I did as a student is like, okay, you're small, you're figuring stuff out, you're almost like, Shmaji forgives us. But then when I was there as a, just digging with the pickaxe, these trenches for the Wi-Fi cables, I almost felt like, wow, now it's like the real deal. Yeah, so like mistakes aside, God's attention is on this place and on you. And so if you do surrender, then also going there was super spontaneous, and it just like figured it worked out so perfectly. And so it's true. In the end, it's not my school. I can't choose to just go there. It's God's school. Who am I? I'm absolutely no one. And actually, when I was there, the last day, I was like, Shimaraji, I would like to stay at your school. And as I was going to the last meditation, there was a Sri Ganesha that appeared on the sky, and I took a photo. So anyone sees me, I can back it up. And so then we meditate, and I look at the other staff members there, and I was like, I expressed this desire. Can we please check vibrations together? And we checked, and the vibrations on for the desire on the left side were blowing cool, but on the right side it was warm. And maybe that's because I still didn't finish my degree. And so it also goes that I could definitely have said, yeah, whatever. I take a gap year. It doesn't cost me anything. I'm here. I love it. But it's also not my decision, as much as I will put that desire, and just in life and anything. And then I have to surrender, because then also you get ideas and you might think, okay, Leo has a pretty big thing. If he doesn't go, it's over. Absolutely not. And it's about this surrendering, because also in life things will open up, and it's just it's a Sahaj school. It says it in its name. So to never forget that.
Mm.
In my personal opinion, I have one last question, and then I don't know if Rohit has anything. Also, because we are almost hitting 1 hour, but I do wonder now. First of all, you guys are bringing me back to the real value of Sahaja Yoga. Right now, I'm living a certain type of Sahaja Yoga, which is not really Sahaja Yoga due to some collective things. So sometimes it's also really good for me to remember this stuff. And I would like to ask you, really wonderful experiences, but is there anything that could be improved at the schools? I mean, in this case, maybe the Davis School, but if you want to, if you also had experiences in other schools, is there anything that could be improved? Still, Rohit, we're doing this turn.
Oh, actually, I haven't, I've been out of the school for a few years now, so I'm not at the perfect place to answer this. But in terms of, one thing that I did notice over the years while I was there, between the first year and the last, is that, especially with Davis School, because it was something, it was a new school in Canada. In terms of improvements, the one thing that is true is that, it was there were a few things that basically you learn as you go at a Sahaj school. You learn as you go. You see how you try things out, and you have to learn as you go. I need to kind of develop the basis of the school, because it is a new thing, to start a whole new boarding school in Canada. You do learn as you go, and you improve it over the years, and you learn from the past mistakes. And so it's a constant improvement that happens. That's all I can say. And I've definitely seen that over the years. First year versus maybe even now, there's a big difference, and it's because it's like a. I mean, if you're gonna put on this, I work at startups, I work at businesses. It's like a startup almost. So you do have to, work hard, do things quickly, break
Mm.
things. The more you do things, the more you might even break things. But then you learn from those mistakes, and then you do it in a way that's scalable. So it's the same thing at a South school, where you do things fast, and maybe sometimes fast, maybe not, and then you learn as you go, and you do it in a way that you can, for example, handle more students in the next year, or handle more staff in the next year. So you learn as you go. That's all I can actually mention in that area. But
Mm.
maybe others have a better perspective there.
No, I agree, actually. I feel like we have a duty in a way to keep improving these schools, and keep growing these schools. Personally, I would say more staff members would never hurt. Having more people, more manpower, definitely helps, because it's very tiring if it's the same people year after year, carrying these projects. And so, yeah, fresh energy. But the other thing that like Rohit said, like, when you have a startup, people are learning so much on the job. You're really learning things very quickly. It's a big, very steep learning curve. And I think that, the thing with schools and with kids is that, kids are very, very forgiving, actually. There's always mistakes and things that happen, or something happens with the teachers, or classes randomly cancelled, but the kids are very forgiving, and that's something that's actually quite a big blessing in these projects. But that also means that we have to be held to a certain standard. And when we think about like teacher training, so I trained after the Davies School, and interestingly, I was quite happy to realize that I'd been doing quite a lot of the things right, but there was quite a lot that I was doing wrong also. I was also really like, oh, okay, like now actually I've got this information, I should give it back. And I think a lot of the time there's a conversation about having qualified staff, why that's important for the longevity of the school, for the for parents who are worried about the kids having like a lower level of education. If anything, a lot of the volunteers are very qualified. Like yogis have amazing talents, have studied amazing things, PhDs, you name it, But that thing that you get from having just a little bit of training, that confidence that you get of like, oh yeah, this is how to be in the classroom. Oh yeah, this is actually how to be a dorm uncle, because you learn so much on the job. It's like being a parent. I mean, I've never been a parent, but I can imagine you're like learning on the job, right? And it's humbling. But I've really seen in the recent years Sahaja Schools trying to put that in place more and more, because it gives everybody, if you're like a seasoned yogi or a fresh yuva or whatever it is, it gives you that that confidence when you've got something in your pocket. You've got the trick, somebody's giving you some advice, and you're kind of not going in there blind. So I'm hoping to see more of that as well. More knowledge being shared also, since we're learning from these mistakes, also like more Sahaj knowledge, what went well, okay, what can we do better, how does that work, how does that tie into Sahaj yoga, how can we listen to each other better, how can we there's a lot.
Yeah, and I would say to bring it way out, to zoom out, if something isn't changing, if something isn't growing, it's dead. So
Mm.
change is inevitable, growth is inevitable. If these two things keep going, then you have a living organism. The moment you stop that and you think you have it figured out, it's over.
Mm. You know what? It reminds me of that phrase Uncle Marcel used to always say. He'd be like, "This is not a race. This is a marathon." You know, and you have to like pace yourself. But I think it's the same with the change. Like you're kind of in the flow of the collective, you know, and you have to stay in that flow. It's the spontaneity, the surrender, like with any Sahaj project. But staying in that flow, you know, and with that desire that we change, we become better. It does happen. You know, it does happen. And I mean, it took me 3 years in the Dave school to leave, but I can say that even in those 3 years, there was a lot of change behind the scenes, you know, also, yeah, management, everything. So, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I do want to ask one more question, Lily, if that's okay. Maybe it's a nice wrap up question. One thing that's nice to hear from both of you, Anna and Leo, I guess from both the staff perspective and the students' perspective, it's a hard word. Could you just tell us, for people listening or just personally, what is something that you would do differently, that now that you've been through that experience of being a staff, now that you've been through that experience of being a
Mm.
student? You talked about bridging this gap between the students, Leo. So maybe each one of you, could you just maybe something that you would do differently, some advice for people who want to volunteer or some advice for students already at the school. um, yeah, maybe just something on that. We can start with Anna first and then go to Leo.
Ooh, I need a moment for this one, actually. I
I'll
like
let,
it
I'll
I,
let you,
though.
I'll
but
jump.
Leo
I'll jump.
first.
I'll save. um,
Thanks.
so of course I cannot give any advice to anyone because I am no better, no worse. But to myself, I would think I wouldn't change anything. To be honest, I see where I am in life. But what I did well, and I would highlight, is to maximize. Because
Mm.
you imagine you're 16, you lived only 16 years of your life. Like every year is such a big percentage. It's almost more than 5% of your entire life, your whole existence. For that one life, you're 16, you're there, you have to maximize. You I guess this happens with maturity, and you have to, especially the Davy school. I was telling many kids, like, oh, they're saying, oh, we're bored now. Like, what do you mean you're bored? Only boring people get bored. Like, there's so much to do. No, I'm serious. Like,
I
the Davy
remember. I
school is in
remember.
such a strategical point where you have to bring the fun into your life. No one's gonna do that in the end. So I'll be like, okay, guys, let's go play football or something. And then some people came, some didn't. So I would say to
Mm.
maximize, because in the end, all you will do is look back, hopefully with zero regrets. That's the idea, to just give it your best shot. Because it doesn't matter if you
Mm.
did mistakes, if you didn't even maximize, it's fine. As long as you're happy with what you did and you are okay with it, and you know that, you know what, everything's considered, that was the best version of me, even though exactly might not have
Mm.
been. As a student, I'm saying that's the point. Growth. Just try to grow. So you have to make some mistakes and listen, and be just open, loving, because the adults will also feel that. And so if you can love
Mm.
them, you will love everyone around you. That's the only thing you need.
It goes both ways, honestly. It goes both ways. And I think for staff members, you know, as adults, I think we're afraid of being perceived as hypocrites, you know, like children are such a mirror. And sure, like, you know, the kids have to wake up for 7 a.m. for meditation. And for example, on the weekend, you didn't wake up for morning meditation as a staff member. You're like, oh, it's my day off. I'm just going to sleep in. But like, actually, I think that we have to be very honest. We have to be very honest with ourselves when we're in these Sahaj projects. And if I could say anything to my younger self, I'd be like, it's really not about you. You have to really realize that you're having these experiences, you make mistakes, but yeah, just admit those mistakes. Everyone gets second chances. Kids are very forgiving, And you're also in this environment to grow, to be polished. You think, oh, it's about the kids and we're all here. It is about the kids, but just as much as the kids are growing, you're growing as well. You just probably don't notice it. So yeah, really, I think coming back to that honesty. And I think something also that I really reacted to, I think, as a student in a Sahaj school, was hypocrisy from adults, and being like, oh, you're telling me I can't be on my phone, but I see you on your phone. So I don't know. It's finding some kind of balance. It's that real kind of authenticity. And I think through love, that is totally achievable. If the kids know that you love them, then it's like, it's a whole other ball game. But yeah, for staff members to have that feeling of like, okay, yeah, I made a mistake, being able to admit that, I think that's really, yeah, respect.
Cool. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just gonna ask this. You can cut it out, Lily, if you want. I'm just gonna ask it because I like this question. Just one thing I would ask, one more, just for Leo specifically, is, and because I've seen different experiences. How do you deal with this transition of being in this bubble of a Sarge school, surrounded by people who do everything for you? You get your meals 3 times a day. You can meditate with people. Nobody's telling it's easy to meditate with others 6 a.m., 6 p.m. And then suddenly you're out of this bubble and you're into this new world, into the university, into your own. You're starting to become your own guru. So what was your experience like? How do you deal with the transition? What's a good what are just some thoughts there and things you want to say about that?
I want to say let's book another podcast because I've a lot to say about this. But I do want to say one thing, and I can only speak about myself. I feel like I think until I left, until I, let's say, was at university, until I was an adult, because I finished at 17. So up until I was 17, 18, I took the active decision to be a yogi. So sometimes we go to the courses here in Amsterdam and they're like, oh, how long have you been meditating? Sometimes I say 21 years, sometimes I say 4. So transition, yeah, it's a big topic, but I would say, as I see it, is this, and it goes to the sponge analogy, but I'll use something else. When you grow up, especially, you're always growing, right? But I feel like when you're not an adult yet, you are completely one with your surroundings. And once I saw for myself, once I got out of that and you're in the world and you start to figure out how life works, then you can choose who you are. But isn't it better to have a jump start? Isn't it better to be, because then you see some people who say, I can't change my life. I've never known what it means to forgive. I've never known what it means to love. But so as I see it, isn't it better to start with that? Not saying you will end with that, because you have, you're gonna finish your school when you're 18, let's say 19. You have the rest of your life to figure out who you want to be. So I don't see it as a limitation. I just see it as a positive. You're literally just giving yourself a better chance at positive values. Doesn't mean you need to choose them. You could do whatever you want. So this is the only thing I can say, because it allowed me, it gave me the tool set to figure out who I want to be. And it just helped me. I was like, how can people not be peaceful? How can people be angry? I didn't understand that. And then once you leave, then you start seeing it. And then I decided, no, I don't want that from life. Or you could be like, I definitely want that. Why has no one showed me that? Fine, no problem. You see both sides of the coin. Anyway, when you're an adult, you're really in charge of your life, and you always are. But I say it's a jump start.
Great.
Otherwise, we have to go forever.
I mean, I don't have the power to do that, but at least on my podcast, you can change the subtitle from Yuva to World Leader Sangha. At least in my opinion, to me, you can do that. You just got qualified. Thank you really much, Leo.
It's so nice to hear also it's nice to hear.
So easy to be as open, because, I just see 3 faces that I've known my whole life. I'm still talking to you guys, huh?
Yeah,
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 that's true.
yeah.
That's true. That's what a podcast is. But at least 1,000 people will listen to this. So, and the entire class of
Wow.
you. So it's time to get bullied. And so, thank you very much, guys. I think it's time also to wrap it up. It's been 1 hour. And first of
Mm,
all, thank you very much, Rohit, because you had the burden to be a guest and a co host at the same time, which is
My
the
pleasure.
first time
mm.
ever in podcasting in general, I guess. So such time first people doing that. Thank you really much, Anna, for joining us. For joining us. Also, you're like 1 hour later than us or earlier. I don't know. I think later. I think later than us.
Later, yeah. It's like 11
Yeah.
p.m.
Yeah, hopefully. And thank you very much, Leo, for your wisdom and of course the leadership in your bloodline is there. I I can sense it. I can sense it. So thank you very much, guys. This was Sahaj Times podcast. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank
Bye, John.
you. Bye.